There is growing uncertainty over Israel's ground offensive in the Gaza Strip after the Israeli military pulled most of its troops out of southern Gaza on Sunday. Israel said it needed to prepare soldiers for future offensives, including into the city of Rafah, where more than 1 million people are sheltering. Meanwhile, some Palestinians have begun returning to their homes. But after months of airstrikes and ground battles with Hamas militants, many are returning to ruins.
This is Khan Yunis after months of bombardment. Displaced residents have been rushing back to their homes after Israel announced most of its troops had been pulled out of the area.
It's a shock. What happened was not small. On my way here in the car, I saw the destruction. It's unbearable. I'm going to my house and I know that it is destroyed. I'm going to move the rubble so I can get a shirt.
A bit further north in Deir al-Balah, much-needed aid arrived at schools and shelters for the first time in 2 months. The need for everything from food to medical supplies is urgent, according to aid agencies. The UN says famine is fast approaching.
Many children have suffered from malnutrition as a result of overcrowding. There have been respiratory and health problems such as hepatitis. All of these things are a result of overcrowding in the shelter because a large number of people left their homes because of the war.
A war that has now lasted 6 months and with no end in sight.
Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner is a spokesman for Israel's military, and he told me more about the strategic considerations behind the IDF's withdrawal of soldiers from Khan Yunis.
Gerard, we know that the IDF is continuing its mission to dismantle and destroy Hamas as a governing authority in the Gaza Strip. And indeed, as the defense minister pointed out, the forces have been withdrawn or taken out of the Gaza Strip in order to regroup, recuperate, and continue for operational planning wherever it takes us. We do know that in the Gaza Strip, there are still at least 6 operational battalions of Hamas, 4 of those indeed in the Rafah area, 2 in more central Gaza, operating at a lower capacity, but in the south, in Rafah, there are still 4 operational battalions. If we are going to be successful at dismantling Hamas, we're going to have to go to Rafah. I think if we've learned anything from our rescue operation 2 months ago in Rafah, that hostages are being held there and that there is an extensive force that can conduct organized fighting against us. So we need to operate in order to get rid of Hamas and bring back the hostages.
Now, there has been speculation that pulling out a large number of troops would change the face of that war, indicating that maybe the IDF is going more into a surgical mode instead of a full-on war, if you will. What do you say to that?
So the operation has different stages, and indeed, as the war evolves, moves forward, and we dismantle much of Hamas's infrastructure, operational capability, production and industry capabilities to produce terrorist weapons and tunnel systems. So, of course, there's a different type of operation that is required. We are maintaining operational capabilities, both precision strikes from the sky as the operation develops, but also ground operations based on intelligence, based on the operational flexibility and freedom that we will maintain and continue to maintain. As we do look forward, we have to realize that this operation has to work in conjunction with a humanitarian operation that supplements, supports, is the right thing to do. And also it's an operational and strategic enabler.
Now, some critics in Israel say that the troop withdrawal gives Hamas the chance to regroup. What's your view on that?
I would say we have good confidence in our forces, in our strategic posture at this time. Of course, as we saw when Hamas went back to Shifa Hospital, it is an opportunity and it is an option. But as we proved when we went back to Shifa, nowhere is safe. We can always take out Hamas wherever they are. We can operate, we can mobilize swiftly, we can engage, and we can seek them out, even if there is an attempt to regroup or take control of different locations like they did in the Shifa instance.
Now, the Israeli government declared clear aims for this war from the beginning: the elimination of Hamas and the releasing of the hostages. Have you gotten any closer to that?
So we've dismantled, destroyed a huge amount of their battalions, their operational forces, taken out many of their commanders, their political leaders as well. I would say, yes, every day that goes by, we are moving closer and closer to dismantling Hamas as a governing authority of the Gaza Strip. That is the goal, or that is goal number one, alongside with goal number two of bringing home the hostages. We have to be successful, because if we aren't successful in dismantling Hamas, it will send a very clear message to terrorist organizations around the world that it's okay to come into people's bedrooms and butcher them. That's something we can't expect, we can't accept, and we will continue to fight in order to make sure that it doesn't happen. So I would say, yes, we are moving closer every day. It's a war that they've been planning for and building their infrastructure and industry over the last 16 years. So if that's the situation, there is no quick fix to the reality. We're going to take our time until we reach our goals.
Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner, their spokesman for Israel's military in Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Colonel.
Good evening.
I want to cross now over to Mike Martin. He's a military analyst from King's College London. Mike, it's good to see you. So we've heard from the IDF that only 6 operational Hamas battalions are left in Rafah and central Gaza. We've also heard from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying yesterday that Israel is one step from victory. Taking all of this together, does this mean that the war in Gaza is close to its end?
Couple of points. So the word battalion is quite problematic when you apply it to an insurgent group, because they don't organize themselves in battalions. That's, of course, what the Israeli Defense Force does, and other militaries. They organize themselves in structures. But as an insurgent group, Hamas, it's quite hard to describe them as organized in battalions. In terms of, is the war going to end soon? Well, I think, the conflict in Gaza can end at any time. There are ceasefire talks going on, and, hostages will be released and the IDF will withdraw. These are all the things that are being discussed at the moment. But it will really only freeze the conflict. In a strategic sense, the conflict will carry on. Hamas still wants to destroy Israel, and Israel still wants to destroy Hamas. And there's no political end state for this conflict. And there's no after-conflict plan if they do this ceasefire for hostages swap. So the fighting could end at any time, but the conflict will continue.
There are critics in Israel who say that the troop withdrawal from Khan Yunis gives Hamas the chance to regroup there. What do you say to that?
Yes, I think in one sense that is very correct. But in another, we've seen there have been several examples during this war of areas of Gaza that have been occupied by Israeli troops, and then rockets have been fired from those areas. Or the Al-Shifa hospital is a good example as well, where the Israelis obviously went through, did a big operation there, kept lots of troops in the vicinity, and then a couple of months later they had to go back and do another operation. And again, that's the nature of these types of war, these insurgent conflicts. It's very hard to kill all of the enemy. And so you end up just going back and it's called, unfortunately, mowing the grass, and you don't get all of the enemy. And then you have to go back again. And so, yes, the Israelis have left Khan Yunis, and that may give some of those Hamas operatives more space. But in the overall sense of the war, Hamas is still able to operate underground, even in those areas that Israel controls.
And, hearing you say that, it sounds like the past 6 months of fighting have been for almost for nothing. If Hamas is still able to operate in some form or fashion, we still don't have the hostages released. So what has been the point of the past 6 months? I mean, as a military analyst, do you also find yourself trying to get through the fog of war all the time when you're trying to understand what's going on?
Yeah, this is a great question. And you'll have to look back at some of my DW interviews in October, November, December. And along with many other people, we pointed out that this type of high-intensity ground combat that Israel has been practicing carrying out in the Gaza Strip is ultimately unsuited to trying to achieve what it said it wanted to achieve, which was to destroy Hamas. You need something much more targeted, specific, intelligence-led, precision, taking out individual people. And this way also, of course, you avoid these massive civilian casualties, which are so counterproductive, not just to Israel's international image, but also it creates the next generation of insurgents or terrorists that want to fight Israel. So I do think, there is this question, is this withdrawal an admission by the Israelis, a tacit admission, that actually their strategy hitherto hasn't been working that well, and now they're going to do something slightly different?
Mike Martin, military analyst from King's College London. Mike, as always, we appreciate your time and your analysis. Thank you.
Thank you very much.